How are you finding the drum show so far? You enjoying it?
Very much. Yeah, I mean, it's one of the, for example, my wife, she's a singer, and every time something like this happens, she's like, I'm so jealous that drummers have this kind of thing. Camaraderie, you know, that goes beyond genres and styles and stuff, and everybody knows everybody, and it's very cool.
Yeah. And do you often bring her along to drum shows or no?
No, I mean, I was gonna, and then I realized it was gonna be a bad idea. Too much of a drum hang for a singer.
Fair enough, fair enough. That's true though, I guess there isn't a singing equivalent.
I don't think there's nothing equivalent to the drum world.
Yeah.
I'm not sure why. I don't know if it's because of the gear. I don't think so, because, you know, guitar players, keyboard players have tons of gear, and they don't have, I don't think they have these kinds of festivals that I know of. I might be wrong, but the drumming community is just very powerful, I think.
Yeah, and special. I
Yeah,
think we're allowed to say that, I guess. So I wanted to start asking you about a recent project that you've been working on, the soundtrack, the original soundtrack for the Apple TV Plus series, The Studio. Not the first time you've composed for screen, but could you tell us about how that came about, how the opportunity came about?
Well, anything that I've done in film scoring has come from Birdman, right? So Birdman was 10 years ago. And immediately after Birdman, I got a call to do a Spanish documentary. Then immediately after that, you know, I did Get Shorty, which was three seasons. One thing has been leading to another. And it was the same thing, you know. My agent in LA told me, you know, I heard Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg are temping, which means placeholding, their new series with the soundtrack from Birdman.
Oh, okay.
So, and I thought, well, I guess at some point, you know, it's gonna get back to me, hopefully, and not some other drummer. And then, yeah, we got a meeting, and it was just through Zoom. I was on tour somewhere, and I sat down with both of them, and they said, man, I'm just gonna say, Birdman is one of our favorite movies, and what you did there is great, blah, blah, blah. And they wanted to know if I knew how to do other things, because that was a little bit of the beautiful thing about Birdman, and also the crux of Birdman. That, you know, if you want drums, of course, you know, I'm your guy. But if you want something else, orchestration, they don't know if I can do it. But I can do it. So they wanted reassurance. And then in the meeting, I told them, you know, I studied classical music, I studied classical piano, you know, jazz, blah, 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 blah. Because they wanted me to score other things that just drums. And that's also what I'm always looking for, to expand my color range, and spread my wings a little bit more when it comes to scoring. And the episode that got nominated for an Emmy for the music was the 4th episode, which is the one where I did the most orchestration for, which I was very happy about, because people get to listen to other side of what I do instead of just the drumming thing, which I love doing it. And now I know what I'm doing, versus 10 years ago in Birdman, I had no idea what I was doing. But now I think I got it down to a science, how to interact with the dialogue, like if I was interacting with a saxophone player, you know, playing a solo, you know, and getting inside the dialogue and answering and, you know, doing counterpoint to what they're doing. That kind of stuff is really cool to me now.
Yeah, and I was on that. I was thinking about how, I mean, you obviously write and release your own music, and comparing that process to soundtracking. Like, is there a dialogue with the producers or the showrunners or the directors to say, actually, can we tweak this? Can we revise this? We want it more this way. Because I would think that kind of feedback doesn't happen when you're writing your own stuff necessarily.
Obviously. Yeah, unless you have a producer or something. But yeah, in this case, you're dealing with the director, with the producer, with the creator, with the music editor, with the music supervisor. Sometimes you're dealing with way too many people. And I've noticed that the best projects is where you're just dealing with one or two at the most. And they give you feedback, and it's back and forth, and then the music editor and the music supervisor can get in there as, you know, helping. But if everybody has an opinion of what it should be, then they start driving me crazy. You know, I did this documentary called The Anarchists, And documentaries are the hardest ones because it's wall-to-wall music.
Right.
You know, it's from beginning to end. There's music all the time. And yeah, I mean, sometimes somebody would be telling me, yeah, that was really cool. And then somebody would send me a mail, you know, what this guy said, maybe I would change it. You know, and this kind of in between them, not agree. And then I had to kind of try to figure out what's the best way to go. And then you have to learn how to interpret what they tell you. And then learn that, oh, when they mean that something is faster, they just want more subdivisions.
Okay.
You know, like arpeggios. Oh, that's faster. You know, so you have to translate people that don't know anything about music, how to get your musical thoughts across.
Yeah, which again, I guess isn't something that you had to, a skill you had to develop writing and performing your own music. All of a sudden you're dealing with other people in a different industry.
Exactly. And a lot of times they don't know anything about music and they don't know how to convey it. You know, what they want. When they hear it, they know, but they don't know until they hear it. And sometimes they fall in love with the temp music, with the placeholder, and then you give them something custom-made, beautiful, perfect, you know, and it just sounds weird to them because they've been listening to this crappy placeholder for a year, you know, and then all of a sudden, you know, it's like a constant struggle, to be honest. But, you know, it's also really cool to, you know, I'm in my little room in my house doing all that stuff, and then a few months later I turn on the TV and I hear what I did in my little room coming out of it. It's like a full circle, cool kind of thing.
Incredible. And I guess a different kind of challenge as well.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, when I write for my own projects, you know, there's the only filter is me, basically.
Yeah.
You know, I'm the one who gets to decide. And sometimes I've done, like, for example, I did a movie called 55, which just came out on, I think it's on Apple too. But it was an Indian American production. And there was this really long scene that was like you know, it had a love thing and, you know, and the strings, and I did all this stuff. And, you know, I worked on it during the pandemic. And I must have worked on this scene like for 2 weeks. And once it was done, I was like, beautiful, it's perfect. I loved it. And then I sent it to the director, like, yeah, maybe let's try something else. And I'm like, you kidding me? I actually had to like go out and take a walk for like 2 hours because I was just so emotional about it. And then I realized, same thing, you know, what he wanted was less things. So then I started taking things out, and then it was fine. I didn't have to start it from scratch. So little tricks that you start learning.
Yeah. It goes back to what you're saying about kind of translating what they're saying.
What they want,
yeah. In researching, kind of preparing for this chat with you, one thing that came up a lot was I realized a lot of your projects seem like you're going out of your way to do something different and new and challenging. Because if it was this year that you released an album, BEATrio. I believe it was drums, harp, and banjo.
Colombian harp and banjo. Yeah, with Bella Flick, who's an incredible banjo player.
Yeah.
Edmar Castaneda from Colombia. So yeah, I mean, first I wanted to do something with Bela because drums and banjo, I mean, it's so rhythmic. You have to be so together, you know, for it to work. I thought it would be fun to do duo, but then he proposed, you know, why don't we bring Edmar in and just make it even more weird with a harp. So, you know, at this point in our careers, it's hard to do something that you've never done before. Yeah. And that presents a completely different challenge. And that's the typical case for it. And it's been a lot of fun.
And is that was that kind of an idea born in your mind that you wanted to specifically work with Bela, and then that third element came in?
Yeah, because I did an album which hasn't come out with a bunch of duos with different people that I wanted to, because the duo is such an exposed, you know, configuration, obviously, right? I mean, you can see right away if it's working or if it's not working. And I had a feeling because of Bela's incredible time feel that it was going to be really easy to hook up with him. So, like as I predicted, it was very easy. But then we said, okay, what can we do as duo?
Yeah.
Maybe it's a little limited. So with a harp, it's a configuration that nobody has ever seen, I don't think.
Yeah.
you know. So it's fun
Yeah.
to do something different.
Which is why I needed to double check my notes to make sure I got it right as
Yep.
drums, harp, and banjo.
Yes, yeah, and if you listen to it, sometimes you can't tell which one's the banjo, which one's the harp. I mean, because they're both very rhythmic, very staccato. They have a lot of attack, and of course the drums have tons of attack. So we have to be really intertwined for it to really work, and it's a challenge, man. I'm exhausted at the end of every gig because it has to be like so precise.
And
but it's fun.
was there a lot of rehearsing and practice to make sure you were?
Yeah, a little bit. A little bit, and then we had to learn. I mean, because Edmar, he's the bass player and the guitar player, basically, in the band. So he doesn't play like a bass player that is only concentrating on the bass. So sometimes he will do things that I wouldn't expect from a bass player, and then I have to adapt to that. And now we really found each other, and now it's really fun.
Amazing. This other album that you alluded to that hasn't come out yet, I don't know if you want to keep details on the raps, but is there anything you can tell us about the different duo combinations that you've planned?
Yeah, one is with John Schofield, one is with Bill Frisell, one is with Chris Potter, and one is with Joel Ross, and the other one is with Bela, with Bela Fleck. So, but what I want to do is record the duos and then blow them up with electronics and orchestration. And so at its essence, it's a duo.
Yeah.
But then I want it to be very cinematic.
Yeah.
Now that I'm into all this stuff, everything I do is very visual. I'm seeing a lot of things while I do this kind of stuff.
Amazing. I mean, so you've worked with John Schofield before. I think you did an album 3x3.
Yeah, 3x3.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite guitar players. I mean, he's so soulful. And it's so hard as a guitar player, as a drummer, as any instrumentalist to play 3 notes and you're like, oh, that's this guy. And John is one of them.
For sure.
Yeah.
Because 3x3 is another project album you did with an interesting approach to personnel configuration. Could you tell us how that works and where the idea came from?
Yeah, I mean, again, I love to just record with some of my favorite musicians that are my heroes. I mean, sometimes I have to pinch myself still because I was fan of all these people when I was a teenager in Mexico City. When I had no contact whatsoever with the United States, I had no idea that I was gonna end up playing with some of these people, my heroes. But I was very lucky, and I've been able to call them to some of my projects. They also call me for their projects, which is amazing. But what I wanted is to create 3 trios, which are the main trios, right? So it's a piano trio, and I'm talking about jazz, of course. Jazz piano trio, jazz guitar trio, and jazz saxophone trio. So I wanted to write specifically for the people in each trio. So, for example, that configuration with John Schofield and Christian McBride, I mean, I was thinking I played with Christian for years with Pat Metheny, so I knows playing very well. But I used to listen to Schofield, when I was in Mexico with Dennis Chambers, that band, I loved it. So I knew his sound really well, and I wanted to write something that sounded like he wrote it. And then the trio with Joe Lovano and John Patitucci, same thing. I wanted to write something specific for them, for Brad Meldau. So, it's just fun to have people in mind and then write specifically for them. It makes me write very differently.
Yeah. And I guess it's a great position to be in. You put it very, very well when you said, I kind of choose the people that I want to play with to be part of a project that I want to do.
I mean, if they accept, great. There's a lot more people I would like to play with.
Yeah.
For example, Thom Yorke is somebody that I admire so much, but I don't know how to get to him. The other album, I guess my most recent album, Shift, where I did this thing with a bunch of singers that gave me material. I got Dave Matthews, I got Trent Reznor, I got Michelle Ndegocello, I got all these people, and I wanted to get also Thom Yorke, but anytime you have to deal with somebody's manager, that's the end of it. I for some reason, because of Birdman, I had direct line to Trent. We had exchanged emails when I got nominated for a Golden Globe, so I was like, okay, Trent, and it was during the pandemic. So, Trent, would you be into this? And he's like, oh yeah. I'm like, really? And same thing with Dave Matthews. But I would love to. I love to just keep experimenting and trying new things that I've never done before.
Yeah.
There's another album coming out. It's called Ellipsis with Michael Leake, the bass player from Snarky Puppy, and Pedrito Martinez, which is an incredible Cuban singer and percussion player. But it's with electronics and with the Yoruba tradition, in odd times, and yeah, it's a really, really, really fun project.
Incredible. If anyone has Thom Yorke's information, come forward now.
Please. I just need an email. That's it.
And I guess he's dabbled in soundtracks as well, so who knows, maybe that's a crossover there. Going back to 3x3, there was one track in particular I wanted to ask you about, because it was just one of my favorite jazz tracks, which is Rooney and Vinsky. And there's a great solo that you do at the end over this kind of vamped phrase.
I think I kind of remember. It's a long time ago.
Putting you on the spot. But I wanted to ask the process in studio of recording that. Is that, do you go in and you're thinking, I have no idea what I'm going to do for this solo? Or is it something that you plan extensively and you come in?
So, as a jazz musician, you tend, what you want to be is in the moment. And that's why I always say that a jazz musician is somebody that is comfortable being uncomfortable. Because you're always going to be, you're not going to have any clue of what's actually going to happen. Yeah. You have an idea what might happen, but you're comfortable with the idea that you have no idea. So to me, that's the essence of the spirit of jazz. You've done it so many times that, okay, whatever happens, it's cool because I've been in that situation before. So I usually don't try to pre-plan anything. Whatever happens. That's what we practice for. It's a very different approach that, like, for example, I'm a big Neil Peart fan, right? But he would compose his drum parts meticulously, and it's beautiful, And the challenge was to play them every night perfectly, and like if it was the first time, right? So sometimes I like a combination of that, If there's a song that we play that I find a fill that just, I feel like that's the perfect fill for that part of the song, maybe I'll repeat it. I have no problem with that. There's a lot of jazz drummers that are like, oh, I'm never going to repeat myself, and that's fine too. But I came from rock, so I love patterns and I love repeating patterns, but I also, love the spontaneity and being in the moment of jazz. So if you can get a good combination of that, to me, that's ideal. Like one leg in the known and one leg in the unknown, and that duality keeps things interesting for me.
And earlier you used the term musician, and in other interviews you've spoken about this kind of, I don't know if you want to call it a phenomenon, but this identity crisis that some drummers have, where they see themselves as drummers and not necessarily as musicians.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I want to talk about today in my slot, because, I think there can be a little bit of a Drumitis Disease, where it's like, it's an amazing instrument, but a lot of drummers, I don't think they think in musical terms. They think in drumming terms, in patterns, chops, licks. And then you don't think about melody, you don't think so much about dynamics, about space, the use of space, which is so important, how to build phrases, how to tell stories. I'm been for years now really trying to refine what I do to communicate, right? Because if you don't communicate with what you're doing and you don't make the audience feel something and you don't feel something, you're failing, I think. At music. You can be doing something really cool and impress people, but that doesn't mean that you're conveying more. That doesn't mean that you're saying something meaningful. And let's not forget, it's going to be a room full of drummers, but most of the time when you're playing in front of people, it's not a bunch of drummers, it's all kinds of people. And you want to get to those people as well, and also the drummers. So how can you use this instrument to make music and satisfy your technical needs and all the things that you like about this instrument, and at the same time tell a story, create characters, create an arc? It's very complicated. But I used to see, classical music is classical music, rock is rock, jazz is jazz. I used to see them as separate entities. And now I realize it's all the same thing. It's good music is good music. It all has melody, it all has dynamics, it all has repetition, it all has call and response, it all has tension and release, it all has use of space. Good music has always the same things in common. And a lot of drummers don't use dynamics, don't use space. For example, gospel chops. It's amazing what they can do, but man, it's just, they don't go down from 30-second notes ever, at least that's what it seems like to me. And it's amazing what they can do, but the use of space to me is just not there. And the use of dynamics is not there. The shift of gears, it's just how much you can fill, 8 bars or 16 bars with just incredible stuff, which, that's one approach. But I just want to show that there's many approaches. And in order to keep the interest of an audience, you need to tell a story. Otherwise, that's why I always say that. It's like if I'm here and I say, well, scrambled eggs, music, movies. Yeah. You're going to think, the hell are you talking about? You sound insane. So a lot of drummers sound like that to me. Just a lot of ideas without connection. But if I say, I woke up this morning and I had some scrambled eggs, and then I wanted to practice some music, so I went to my room and I practiced for a little while, and then after 4 hours of practicing, I got tired and I went to watch a movie. Then all of a sudden, it's a perfect phrase. So the techniques that you can use in order to grab this idea and this idea and this idea and turn it into a story, that's what I like to talk about. How to connect, how to use that as connecting tissue between those ideas so that it sounds like you're telling a story, you're speaking, basically.
So hopefully not to spoil anything that you'll talk about later in your slot, but if you had in front of you a drummer that was very rooted in the I'm a drummer mentality, and you wanted to encourage them to take the first steps of seeing themselves as a musician, what would be the first things that you kind of
First
suggest?
thing I tell them is play something that you can remember and stop. Because sometimes they'll play blah, 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 blah. Okay, play it again. Oh. They can't. So play something, stop, remember what you played, and the space in between that phrase can tell you. It's like when I'm speaking to you, right? So I'm saying something, I listen to what I just said, and then I have to follow it up with something logical. And I use commas and dots and question marks and all those things that you use in language, same thing. So play something, leave space. Play it again. Play it softer. Play it louder. Add a little something, so that it all has the DNA. You're starting to tell a story, and it becomes a character. So in every story, you need main characters, secondary characters that just help the main character, maybe. But unless people can start holding on to what you're doing, he's repeated that, and she loves you, yeah, yeah, yeah. She loves you, yeah, yeah, yeah. She loves you, yeah, yeah, yeah. Right? I mean, that sounds nuts if I say it like that. But if you put it in a musical context, that's the hook. You need that in order to remember what's happening. And same thing goes with the drums. If I play just and then there's nothing for you to hold on to. But if I do I'm talking about the same thing. It's the same DNA. So all of a sudden you start understanding. I get it. And just to give your playing a little bit more of a sense of organization. That's the main key.
Yeah, and I think as you were speaking, I was in my head realizing, coming full circle back to the discussion we were having about Birdman, and how you're describing music and playing drums as conversing. When you apply that then to Birdman, when you're kind of playing off of actors delivering their lines of dialogue, and you're contributing to that dialogue in a way with your playing.
Definitely, yeah. Yeah, and it's storytelling, right? I mean, movies are, one of the most beautiful forms of storytelling. And the story can start with, a blue sky, and the camera pans down very slowly, and you see somebody sitting on a bench far away. And you're already hooked, like, who is this person, right? Or it can start with an explosion and people running, and then, you know, a car chase, and you're also hooked. So the story can be anything. It's just a matter of how you're gonna develop it and how you're gonna pace yourself, and you need a lot of patience. I always tell students, patience. You know, don't be afraid of space, you know, let it hang and see what that tells you. If you're always speaking, you know, and you don't leave any space, you don't have time to understand what you're talking about. And the space is crucial for that. So I always like to give examples of how I approach that in order to start playing more musical phrases that just are more connected to each other. That's all.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much.
Oh,
If we're good for time, if anyone has any questions, feel free to share them. Otherwise, I'll keep going. Anyone?
Sorry, I don't know anything about Birdman. I don't think I only watched half of it. But did you have to watch just dialogue and then write it off of that, or was there a sort of like? I remember there being crazy sort of jazz.
Well, actually, I sat down with the director and we did it just with the script the first time. And he would just describe the scenes to me and then just have me improvise based on what he just told me. So to me, as a jazz musician, you know, reacting to what you told me is similar to reacting to what somebody else is playing. You know, you're kind of trained to react to your surroundings and interact and do counterpoint to that. So he would say, okay, in this scene, you know, he's sitting down and then he stands up, opens a door, and walks through a hallway. So I would tell him, okay, every time you imagine that next phase of the scene, please raise your hand so that I can imagine it with you. So then I would think, okay, he's sitting down, okay. And then he would go like this, okay, he stood up. So that requires, you know, a reaction from me. So then I would see him do that. Okay, he stood up, you know, a little something. And then I would see him with his eyes closed and, you know, all of a sudden he would go like that. Oh, he opened the door. And now he's walking through a hallway. So now there's motion. So then obviously I want to go like, you know, something, a heartbeat. That implies movement. So it's just those kinds of things that is very subconscious because I've been improvising for so long now. I mean, I always say that I was too busy for rock and roll. I wanted to be a rock musician, but I was always playing too much because I was just hearing too much stuff in my head. And I was always improvising. And even though I didn't know I was improvising, I loved improvising. I would just put my little tape player and record myself, and then when it was done, I would flip it and record myself again, just playing things. But it was very, you know, primal. I didn't know how to organize my ideas, and but it's basically just reacting to something by your training of how to improvise.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. I went to see you play at the Jazz Cafe twice.
Oh, cool.
And I love the gigs, but also noticed that they were very different. You had a different band. I think the wife was there, but everybody else was
Oh, yeah, it was Migration and Bad Hombre, probably.
Yeah. And I was wondering, how can you switch between, you know, quite different style and be credible in both events?
I mean, like I said, it all depends on your influences, right? So
Yeah.
I grew up listening to rock and roll. Ringo was, you know, my first influence. Ginger Baker, Charlie Watts, John Bonham, Stuart Copeland, Neil Peart, you know, all those guys. Then Billy Cobham, Dave Weckl, Steve Gadd, Vinnie Colaiuta, Dennis Chambers, then Tony Williams, Art Blakey, Roy Haynes. So, you know, I started from rock and then found my way to jazz. So I played rock for a while, then I played fusion for a while, then I played Latin jazz for a while, then I started playing jazz. And then, you know, I realized that what I am, it's all of those things, you know. Not because I ended up playing jazz, I don't like rock anymore. So I like to fuse everything because everything's inside me, you know. I still love doing this, but I also, you know, love doing that. So I try to find situations where I can satisfy all those artistic needs that I have inside of me.
Also, I appreciate the first gig. You mentioned something about the immigrants. And I thought, wow, that's usually musicians, especially say jazz musician, they don't do politics at all, just completely removed from.
Which is disappointing to me.
Be disappointed, and you didn't. So I thought, wow, that's a man. I really
Thank you.
appreciate
I
that.
mean,
Thank you.
I'm Mexican.
Yeah.
You know, I moved to the United States when I was 21. I became an American. I see what's happening in the States, and it horrifies me. You know, it's terrifying, and some. I mean, if we don't say anything, I feel like we're complicit just by being silent. So I think it's very important to always speak your mind, and we don't have to agree. That's fine. But I think it's very important in this day and age, just to because you know what we're doing. When you think about it, creative music, art, it's kind of the counterculture. You know, the lowest common denominator is so pervasive now. You know, in art, well, in art, I don't want to say art, in music industry. You know, that what we're doing, which is usually for a small audience, but it's hard to do, it's really hard to do, and it requires a lot of attention from the audience. You know, that's like the resistance. You know, that's basically the resistance, because, you know, what we have every day spitting at us is this, you know, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. So to sit down and listen for an hour and a half to complex, deep music, that's resistance, man. You know, counterculture. And I feel like the counterculture is so important right now, where the stupidification of society and culture has become so pervasive. You know?
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you. We might have time maybe for one more question.
Any advice, Antonio, for drummers looking to compose their own music, like some strategies to get started, or?
Well, I mean, I always say drummers should learn how to play piano.
Yeah.
You know, piano, because, you know, for example, I had to take vibraphone at Berkeley, and they make you take vibraphone because, of course, it's a melodic harmonic instrument, and you like to hit things. So yeah, the vibraphone would be great. But you know, who's going to have a vibraphone at home? You know, it's just so complicated. So you can get a 4-octave keyboard, and you know, it's just. I think it's so important to learn a little bit, at least, of piano, some harmony, some basic stuff, and then if you love music and you love listening to music, you know what good music sounds like. So, you know, for me, it was hard in the beginning because everything I would write would sound crappy to me, because I had already been playing with Pat Metheny, and I was trying to write for my first album, and I'm playing with all these master composers, and then, you know, everything I write sounds like crap to me. And then, you know, little by little, it's like, oh, this sounds better. And I was imagining, what would this sound like if Pat was playing it or if Chick Corea was playing it? And I was like, I think it would be acceptable. And then little by little, I started feeling a little bit more confident about my thing. But it's like a muscle, you know. If you don't do it, it's hard to all of a sudden write something really cool. You have to keep doing it, and just like practicing, you know. The more you write, the more you'll understand how that part of your brain can function. Yeah.
Do you have one quick one? Yeah?
So I'm not asking for myself because I'm not a drummer, but my boyfriend is a drummer. And I see he has had a very similar sort of experience going from rock and roll to fusion, now into jazz, and mostly West African music and such. What is some advice that you could give for someone who is so multi-dimensional genre, you know, where to go, you know, in an educational sort of, I don't know how to say it. Well, yeah, like educationally, like, is it clinics? Is it a set program? Is it like a little bit of everything? Like for someone who is so, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it can be, you know, a huge advantage to be kind of a blank canvas and know all these things. And I used to envy, like, for example, people that would come from Cuba, you know, and they had such a specific thing that they knew how to do. And, you know, that was their thing. but I didn't feel like I had a thing. So, you know, I love the Cuban stuff and I learned how to do it, but I also love the Brazilian stuff. This was so cool, and the African thing, but jazz and then fusion and rock, you know, it was just so much that I like. Electronic music. And I think that's great, because the more you do, the more you know, the wider your artistic vision is going to be. I feel like people that only do one thing is like a horse that is like that, which can be cool, but I feel like this is an advantage, you know. But the problem can be in how to focus, right? Because if you like a lot of things, how do you approach it to make it one concise thing? So that's you know, that comes from, I think, from experience, from doing it a lot, and then starting to eliminate things. Like, for example, like I said, I used to play like soukous music, Brazilian music. When I was at Berkeley, I would do all kinds of gigs, you know, and I would try to do them as authentically as possible. I wanted to sound like a, you know, like a Brazilian drummer, and I want to sound like a Cuban drummer, and I want to sound like, you know, real fusion and real rock. But then I started becoming a professional musician. Like, okay, what things can I live without? And what things I cannot live without? So I cannot live without improvisation. I cannot live without interaction, like full interaction with musicians. I cannot live without, you know, going very deep into things. I don't like shallow things. And okay, I love reggae, but I can't live without playing reggae. Even though I played reggae and it's a lot of fun. And I can also live without playing, you know, Brazilian music all the time. And so you start getting a little bit like this, but you know all the things. So when you start getting like this, all of a sudden, if I'm playing jazz, it has all those things included in it. Without me even knowing it, because it's part of my vocabulary now. So if I'm playing jazz, all of a sudden I'll do something that I don't even think, oh, now I'm going to play a little Brazilian thing here. No, but for example, this band with Bella Fleck and Edmar, you know, it's all over the place. I mean, we play a little bit of Latin, a little bit of jazz, and with the Metheny Group, it was the same thing. You know, we used to play like a heavy backbeat thing and then a very sparse ballad. And I would not have been able to do those gigs if I didn't have that other knowledge, you know, because it's just never too much to know about a lot of things. It's just going to make you a more versatile musician, and you can be master of a lot of domains, I think. But, you know, like I said, I can live without certain things, and I cannot live without certain things. And the things that I cannot live without, that's what I want to concentrate on. Yeah. So it's a matter of doing it enough that you'll find your path. Yeah, no.
Wonderful. Okay, well, thank you so much,
My
Antonio.
pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.